Well, I'm just about ready to start grouting. And as you can see in another tape in the series, I've already tiled the floor. And this is a typical situation for me because I like to get all the tile work done in any given room before I start grouting any one part of it. It was specifically important on this floor that I do both tiles together because of this cove tile. In order to get its position correct, you need to know the exact height of the level of the floor. So the floor must go in before the cove tile. But as far as its construction here, this little mortar bed is pretty much the same as this one behind the field tiles, with just a couple of differences in details. Now what I have here is a bucket of grout that's been slaking for about 10 minutes. And by slaking, what I mean is that I've initially mixed the dry and the wet ingredients and then just set the bucket aside to rest. And during that 10-minute period, all of the dry ingredients absorb as much moisture as they can. And now that that period is over with, before I can use it again, I want to remix it. You can see the consistency of it is quite a bit different from the thin set. It's not as runny, it's kind of stiff, but it's still plastic enough for me to force into the joints, and that's really important with grouting. Now, I'll be applying the grout with this tool, which is a rubber-faced grouting trowel. It has a resilient back that allows me to really force the grout into the joints, and this rubber face will help to keep the tiles from scratching as well. So first let me get this wall wet down. I'm doing this for a number of reasons. First of all, these tiles are highly absorptive and they'll probably suck a good deal of the moisture out of the fresh grout, and that would prevent a good bond right down in the joint. First thing I do is get the trowel loaded up. This is not exactly the neatest process in the world. You can see that I'm running this trowel flat against the wall to push in, and then at a higher angle to cut it away. And also it's better if you hold the trowel at a slight angle to the joint, otherwise it'll dig in the joint and you'll end up with this. You can see that I try to go over each spot about 2 or 3 times to ensure that I get full coverage. And I work from several different directions. Now, once I have the field tile filled in, then I can concentrate on the trim on the sides. Very often I'll just grab a hunk of it in my hand, shape my fingers to conform to that curve, and just force it in. And now all I really need to do is slice off the excess big hunks. And now I can go to work with the sponge. Now the whole point here is to use the least amount of water that's necessary to remove the grout. And the first thing I want to do is go over the entire area I've just filled in and just get it wet. You see right here, this is the kind of stuff you're wanting to look for. This is grout pigment and latex that's starting to harden on the tile. You want to make sure that that's all loosened. See hardly any water on that sponge at all. Now what I'm doing is just running the sponge with the joint, sometimes diagonal to it, but using whatever motions it takes to get the joints consistently wide. The amount of pressure that you need to apply on the sponge will depend on a number of things, like the kind of grout you're using. Is it sanded or unsanded? How wide the joint is? How dry the grout is? There are a number of factors, so you want to start off slow with a moderate amount of pressure. And if you're applying too much pressure, it may mean that the grout has really started to harden up, and you just cut back on the amount that you fill in before you start cleaning up again. Now, I have the joints here just the way I like them, but you can see up above a haze has started to form. And it's really important that you get that off as soon as you can. What I do is start off with a sponge that's been rinsed out, and then I just use a short wipe using one side of the sponge only, and then I turn it over. Now, it's not going to be real apparent what is happening right here, but in about 5 or 10 minutes we'll come back to this and you'll see that this has hazed over and this has no haze on it. All right, here's that section that I didn't quite completely wipe off, and you can see right here where a thick haze is formed. Over here the tiles are nice and shiny. Now over here, just 2 more wipes and this section will be done. Now the only thing that I have to do here is just cutting this grout square to the wall. Now, if I had waited until the grout was hard, this would be impossible to do. There. Now, the amount of area that I've covered here could be a lot smaller, and it also could include the entire installation. But for the circumstances we have here, absorptive tiles, relatively high heat, this amount is about right. The important thing is you want to start off slowly, see what it's going to take to produce quick filling of the joints and easy cleaning off of the excess. Now all I have to do is finish filling out the rest of these joints, and this job is history. Now, I don't have to show you every joint being filled, but there are a couple more points worth mentioning, like loading up the trowel from a slug of grout on the wall rather than dipping into the bucket. It's a real help when getting into tight spots. Here's a good illustration of the rhythms of grouting. Pack it in, cut it off. Pack it in, cut it off. Besides, it's fun to go around a corner. And here are a couple of good shots that show how grout joints are shaped. The amount of material that you'll need to remove depends upon the shape of the tile and your own personal taste. The most important thing is to have all the joints uniform across the entire field of tiles. Well, this wall just needs a little more work. Once I get the grout cleaned up, I'll have to go around the expansion joint here, clean it out, get it off the floor tiles. Then I'll take the margin trowel and clean out the joint between the tiles and the tub. And also I'll cut the grout out around the window frame up there. And then the plumbing fittings have to be cleared up. This little guy here resulted because these tiles here fell about 3/8 of an inch short of the cove tile. So rather than put a stripe of this color in there, I thought I'd just put a little pinstripe. It's details like this that can really make a job interesting. Well, even though the walls are ready, I won't be satisfied until the floor and the countertop are done. And when that happens, we'll be able to see how all these parts work together.